Tools included in the Settings tabs should be the first ones that you use when you start a new stormwater urban drainage system with our stormwater design software. On this tab, you'll find the unit selectors for the various parameters involved in the drainage system calculation and design. Then, on the Calculation Parameters panel, you will find access to several dialogues, of which we have already met some along this series of videos. The first is the one that lets you set the project's general parameters and, as you will see, gives you access to this dialog with 6 tabs. The Drawing Area tab contains the options for positioning the display bar at any of the edges of the drawing area. It also includes options that enable you to define the direction of drawing when creating streets, channels, and storm sewer pipes. When you select the downstream direction, the first point you click will be the one that is located at the upstream end of the drawn street or pipe section. The upstream direction of drawing does exactly the opposite. The first point is the section's downstream one, while the latter shall be that located upstream. Finally, there are the options for assigning or calculating elevations at streets endpoints and manholes from the elevation points included in the project. Maximum distance field lets you set a safety margin for assigning or calculating elevations, so as to ensure that only those elevation points that are really near the point under consideration are taken into account. In the Drainage Inlets tab, you have the property that lets you define the size of the inlet symbol, specifically its length, in the drawing area. Also, to make sure that the automatic inlets to manholes allocation is properly done, you have the option of specifying a maximum distance within which inlets must be in order to be allocated to any manhole. In such a case, some drainage inlets remains unassigned, that is, outside of this specified maximum distance. A warning message at the end of the sewer network calculation or design will be shown, telling you the number of inlets that are not yet assigned. In the Sub-Basins tab are the options to define the default properties for each new tributary area to create in the project. Also, prior to polygons from drawing files importing, it is important that you set respective default or common properties here. Similarly, in the Surface System and Sewers Network tabs are the default properties that will be assigned to each new street point, street, or channel, and for each manhole and sewer pipe section to be drawn in the drawing area. Finally, there are the options for calculation and design used specifically for the stormwater sewers networks. The field values below the title design velocities are used as a reference in the sewer pipes table, to highlight those sections that violate these limits in the columns for full section velocity and real velocity. Additionally, only the full section velocity is used in calculations related to the automatic design options. Note that there are 2 criteria for a sewer network's automatic design: fixing the minimum sewer's longitudinal slope and, the most recommended, setting a design value for the relationship between the real flow and the maximum capacity of the pipe section. The Cross Sections Manager is one of the additions in our storm sewer design software's new version. This manager will allow you, as you see, to choose among 5 types of cross-sections to be assigned to streets or channels at the surface drainage system of any project you create in the software. Thus, depending on your criteria and the purpose of your design, before you start to create the superficial systems components, you must define here the typical cross-sections that you expect to use. Once created, you'll see them listed in the Streets or Channels panel at the Surface Drainage tab, in order to select from there whichever applies as you build the system. Similarly, the Drainage Inlets Manager is to define the typical rainfall interception devices in your project. Here you will find, besides the 8 drainage inlets we had included in the first version, 5 new types to choose from. Among others, you will see that it is now possible to introduce the interception flow tables for any drainage inlet type, either as a function of the approaching flow to the inlet or as a function of the upstream's calculated water depth. Also, drainage inlets in sag points have been added. In the case of the grate inlet in a sag, in addition to the geometrical parameters necessary to determine the intercepted flow based on the orifice formula, you can specify a percentage of reduction in its efficiency, in case you want to set a safety factor for any possible grate obstruction. Also, you must enter what the relationship is between the grate's free or flow area and its total area for the calculation. Now you find the project's pipe library manager. This is the same one that is built into our sanitary sewers design software and, as you see, it lets you define in principle the range of possible pipes' diameters according to their class or structural strength. For this, fields are included for you to specify the minimum and maximum burial depths to which each diameter can be placed, based on the selected bedding class. Similarly, for the purposes of automatic design, the option to set the priority of selection of the bedding class is available. Finally, you will see that, for each diameter at each pipe library, it is possible to specify the unit cost per unit length of pipe, which will serve to estimate the sewer network's total cost once the calculation of the amounts of respective materials is done. The Intensity Duration Frequency Curves button lets you create in the project the design intensity curves for one or more return periods. Once you have created those curves in any project, you will see, at the top of this panel, the list of associated return periods, so that you can select the one to take in the calculation and design of the urban drainage system. Finally, you will see a button that leads to the parameters for calculating the project's amount of work and materials. These options are focused on the stormwater sewers networks as they are, essentially, the ones to be designed.